this is serious stuff. The system they put together is inherently racist.
Tonight, a story you will only see here. Former NFL players taking the fight for their share of the NFL's concussion settlement to the Department of Justice. They say they're being denied because of race. John Taffer is back with us tonight. 10 million job openings in the country, but millions who can't find work. Mr. Small Business with his take on why. Plus this.
I thought it necessary to resign in front of you. School board, I quit. I quit your policies.
A teacher quits on the spot, fed up with the politics she says are interfering with her job. But first, the battle over mask mandates, it's playing out in communities across the country and between two high-level officials in Texas. Both join us live tonight. Great to have you with us. The Donlon Report starts right now. Good evening. We have talked a lot about vaccine mandates. Tonight, we lead off here with a very public debate about mask mandates. This fight is playing out in Dallas, Texas, between two high-profile elected officials, and it started during a public meeting. Judge Clay Jenkins was presiding over the Dallas County Commissioners meeting and announced that everyone there was required to wear a mask. Commissioner J.J. Koch questioned the order, wouldn't wear a mask, and as a result was basically kicked out of the meeting. Now, complicating things was an order from Governor Greg Abbott saying state and local governments were not allowed to impose mask or vaccine mandates. So Koch asked if it was even legal to require masks. Jenkins countered that Governor Abbott was overstepping his authority and setting pandemic rules at the local level was part of Jenkins' job. Hard to believe. Or maybe it isn't at this point, but lawsuits have been filed and the debate over wearing a mask is now being determined in a court of law. That's where we are. This is what it has come to in our country, and it's where we start tonight with the two men at the center of this standoff. They're both with us tonight. We appreciate their time. Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins and Dallas County Commissioner J.J. Koch. Judge, we'll get to you in a minute, but we want to start with Commissioner Koch. It sounds to me, Commissioner, like this really wasn't about the masks for you. It was more about how it went down.
It's about the rule of law. I was extraordinarily disappointed in the judge for citing a piece of authority coming from the Texas Supreme Court, saying that our body was a court, like a real court of law. Texas has some silly things regarding how we name things. We have a railroad commission that does oil and gas. Our commissioners' courts are executive and legislative bodies, not a judicial body. In fact, we explicitly in our lawsuits make sure we say, hey, we are not a court, so that way we're not dragged into certain types of lawsuits. I mean, that was a flat-out legal lie told by our county judge. Using authority that you don't have is inappropriate at any time.
Well, it sounds
masks may be appropriate at some time.
Right. It sounds like the authority's been upheld, though, Commissioner. At least one, and I think maybe even two judges have upheld this county mandate that we're talking about here.
Yeah, just one activist judge here in Dallas County has decided to issue a temporary restraining order on the governor's lawful order over the entirety of the state of Texas. I anticipate that TRO is going to be overturned in short order. This particular activist judge has done things like this before and has been overturned by higher courts. We're going to get a place where we get some legal sanity here soon, but unfortunately, Judge Jenkins is playing games with the people's time and money.
How far will you take this, Commissioner?
All the way to the Supreme Court.
If you need to. All right, now clear something up for me. Was this order from Judge Jenkins about this particular meeting, or was it a county-wide mandate?
At the time, when we were in Commissioner's Court, his mask mandate was only for our Commissioner's Court, a body that meets twice a month with about 40 people. So his life-saving effort at that time was for 40 people twice a month. It was political theater. And unfortunately, that political theater came at the cost of the rule of law.
Well, couldn't you argue, though, that the theater was actually added to by you? You knew going into this meeting that you were supposed to wear the mask, and then you were essentially had to be escorted out. That's my question. Is this all theater?
I did not know that I had to wear the mask. In the first minute while the invocation was going on, Judge Jenkins tugged my jacket and said, hey, listen, I got off the phone with the UT Southwestern folks. I need you to wear this mask. And he pulled a mask out of his desk telling me that I had to wear it. I was shocked because I believe and still understand GA 38, the governor's order, to be in effect.
Yeah. So I read somewhere where you had been at a Starbucks earlier that day and had a mask on to go in. What's the difference between that? Why not just wear it in the meeting and figure this out later?
Sure. There's a difference between a lawful order and an unlawful order. There are plenty of folks that are my constituents that refuse to wear a mask because they believe that it does not stop the spread of COVID effectively, that it is not an effective measure. I disagree with them, but I do disagree that they have certain legal rights and they were given the right by their governor to not have to wear a mask. Now, I may choose to wear a mask in certain situations, but I'm not going to force my constituents that have decided that they are not going to wear a mask, that have decided so based on the governor's lawful order. I'm not going to turn my back on them, as Judge Jenkins has done regarding the rule of law.
Right. So, Commissioner, all politics is local. We know that. Texas is a big state. Why shouldn't local jurisdictions essentially decide what's best for them?
Yeah, we did have that kind of patchwork for quite some time. As we were developing in these phases and cycles of this crisis, we did have some local officials doing very different things, and Governor Greg Abbott tried to make that work. Unfortunately, a number of our large county executives, including Judge Jenkins, went too far. So far as to harm businesses, so far as to harm individuals' rights. That's when he had to step in and stop the madness. He's going to get a chance to do that again at the Texas Supreme Court when the Attorney General brings this particular case up to the Texas Supreme Court.
All right. Dallas County Commissioner J.J. Koch, thanks for your time tonight. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
We want to turn now to Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins, who is with us. And we should point out, Judge, as well, that it's a title in Texas as the chair of the county commissioner's court. I'm guessing the governor is just as sure he has the authority to do this as you are that he doesn't. Where does that leave us?
Oh, I don't know that that is true. The governor has actually put on the call for a special session here in Texas, giving him the authority, asking the legislature to pass new laws to give him the authority to stop us from having mask mandates. So one might wonder, if he already has the authority, why does he need the legislature to pass laws to give him the authority? The important thing for us to remember, though, is the governor's not the enemy. Commissioner Koch is not the enemy. There's a lot of politics where it doesn't need to be. We're all on the same team, and that team is public health. The enemy is the virus. We need to focus on doing what the doctors tell us to do to stay safe. And what the local doctors and the CDC are telling me is we need to wear masks indoors. So that's what we're going to be doing now.
Right.
And
did you unilaterally make this decision, Judge? That's one thing I couldn't find in my research today. Was this your decision alone, or was it up to the county commissioner's court to vote on this?
Well, under our statutory framework, it's my decision. But before making that decision, I convened all the school superintendents of public schools. I talked to the Retailers Association, the Bar Association, the Restaurant Association, the Manufacturers Association, our Chamber of Commerce, our Citizens Council, and many, many others. In fact, I just got off a phone call with private schools who are not included in this order.
Had you brought it up to the court, though, would it have passed?
I believe it would have, but again, under our statutory framework, the state law is very clear. This is an emergency order to be made by me in my capacity as emergency management director. I had many hats. Chairing the commissioner's court meeting is one of those responsibilities. Managing emergencies is another, and that is by Texas statute and law.
So Commissioner Koch called you an activist judge and said essentially that you're doing this illegally. What is your response to that?
Well, actually, Commissioner Koch called the judge that he filed his lawsuit in front of an activist judge because the judge denied him his relief.
Right. Do you think, had this come up in another court, there are a lot of judges here, Judge, forgive me for confusing that, but had this been in another area of Texas, there's a chance you think that this would have failed, perhaps, where you've won?
I am a recovering lawyer, and I don't speculate on what every judge would do. We believe we're on very solid legal footing. The law gives the governor the ability to suspend regulatory rules, like having to take a board to be a nurse from Louisiana and practice in Texas. It doesn't give him the authority to stop mayors and county judges from responding to emergencies. The judge agreed with us. Also, other judges in Texas in other areas are all agreeing with us as well as these cases are coming up.
You know, a lot of people are going to watch this, Judge, and sort of shake their heads and say, of all the things you have on your agenda there in Dallas County, you're going to court and arguing about wearing a mask.
Well, I agree. And I wish Commissioner Koch hadn't sued us. Again, this shouldn't be political. This is about public health and saving lives. And that virus doesn't care whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. It only is looking for a host, and that's how viruses work. And so the people that have trained their entire adult lives to advise us in this moment work at the CDC and our local hospitals. And what they're all saying is right now in Texas and in North Texas, in an area of Hasbred, where for 8 million people in a 19-county area, we only have 2 pediatric ICU beds left. It's time to wear a mask indoors.
And so it stands for now. We'll see where it goes legally. Judge Clay Jenkins, Dallas County, thank you, sir, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now to another mask battle, this one involving the White House and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. They're at odds over mask mandates in schools. NewsNation's Brian Enton in Miami with more on the ongoing battle there. Brian?
Yeah, Joe, the feud over the masks continues here in Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis, of course, against any sort of mask mandate in schools. He's had this very public feud with President Biden for the last couple of weeks. And now President Biden has actually said that he thinks that the federal government could intervene in Florida. He said it's possible. He doesn't believe they necessarily have the power, but he's asking his administration to look into it. As you can imagine, that did not go over well with Governor DeSantis. He says he will fight the federal government if he has to.
Obviously, if you're talking about the federal government coming in and overruling parents in our communities, you know, that would be something that we would fight back vociferously against.
Our war is not on DeSantis, it's on the virus, which we're trying to kneecap. And he does not seem to want to participate in that effort to kneecap the virus.
So this back and forth between the governor of Florida and the White House, it doesn't seem like it's going to be ending anytime soon.
Brian, I know too this debate over masks is happening not just in Florida, but all over the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see this video every day coming out of school board meetings. The one from last night might be the wildest we've seen. Williamson County, Tennessee, right outside Nashville. The school board there was debating a mask mandate. You had a packed room, and then you had anti-maskers outside in the parking lot. They were threatening the doctors and nurses, saying things like, "We know who you are, and we will find you." The sheriff's department had to show up out there. At the end of it all, the board ended up voting for a mask mandate for elementary school students there.
Pretty wild to see. Brian Enton, live for us in Miami tonight. Thanks, Brian. It's a story you'll only see here. Former NFL players say they are not getting their share of the league's concussion settlement because of race. Tonight, they're taking the fight to the Department of Justice. But next, he's back. Bar Rescue's John Taffer on why there are so many people still unemployed despite 10 million job openings in America. Don't forget, you can follow us on social media at the Donlon Report on Twitter.
Jobs are up and monthly price increases have come down. Economic growth is up, the fastest in 40 years, and unemployment is coming down. So I would argue the Biden economic plan is working.
That was President Biden today touting his economic plan, specifically pointing out the number of new jobs created under his administration. But there is a catch. While U.S. job openings reached 10.1 million in June, there are still more than 8.5 million unemployed Americans, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, meaning businesses are still struggling to hire. Joining me now, friend of the program, John Taffer, Bar Rescue host and executive producer. John, it's always great to see you, and it's great to have you tonight. So millions of Americans are unemployed, and there are a record number of job openings. What gives?
You know, Joe, thank you for having me back. I went to bring my dog to the veterinarian the other day because she wasn't feeling well, and the vet couldn't give me an appointment for a week because they don't have their employees. I went to a retail store. They didn't have employees to check out. This isn't specific to the restaurant industry. It seems to be across all industries. And here's what worries me, Joe. As you know, we have 10 million jobs available, we read this morning. Has America's psyche changed? Have we, from being a self-reliant society, are we starting to become a government-reliant society? People are sitting home rather than going to work. Even with even money, I suggest that pre-pandemic, for the same dollars, people probably would have gone to work to get a promotion, invested in their future, accomplish something. Today, there seems to be a different mentality change. It's extremely frustrating. Here in Las Vegas, Joe, restaurants are open 4 and 5 days a week because we can't staff for 7 days a week.
Yeah, you know, we went out, John, for dinner on Sunday night, and there was a big A-frame sign out in front of the restaurant offering $500 to come and work there. I mean, just a straight bonus if you come and work there. So paying more money is still a struggle for these businesses that are trying to find people and pay them more.
You know, I was with the president of one of the largest gaming companies the other day, and he told me that because the employees aren't coming back, they're making modifications with technology and logistical changes and such. He feels when this is over, we might need 20% less employees. Because business must go on, Joe. We're finding solutions, whether it's automated ordering systems. My Taffer's Tavern restaurant concept is all computerized and robotic cooking techniques. So business is seeking solutions, and I think about 20% of these jobs are going to get replaced with technology.
So
and if I can give an example.
Yeah, go
Joe,
ahead.
the other day I was at a hotel. I ordered some breakfast and room service. My phone rings. I answer it, and the phone says, "Your robot is at the door with your room service." I opened my door, and sure enough, there was a robot with my food. I took my food. The robot said, "Thank you," and went on down the hallway. That eliminated 8 or 10 employees from that hotel. And these are the things that industry is going to have to do.
John, last time we talked, we also talked about your fears of costs going up because they were going up. You itemized them, and we found out today that prices are going up again. Production prices not only are going up, but consumer prices as well. How worried are you about this uptick for the service industry?
Very much so. You know, we can't increase the price of a hamburger by 20, 30, 40%, but that's the kind of price hits we're getting. So the restaurant industry can't pass it on to the consumer quite as easily as other restaurants. So I look at a friend with a pizza place, Joe, a pizza restaurant went out of business last week. He didn't have the employees to work it. He survived the pandemic, invested his last dollars in it, and now that the pandemic is supposedly winding down, he lost his business then. So this crisis isn't ending for my industry. I don't think we're close to an end yet.
John, we had Jared Bernstein on last week, White House economic advisor, and I asked him what he would say to mom and pop stores and restaurant owners. Here's a bit of the clip.
The president has said that the enhanced benefits will roll off in September as planned. And the important thing there is that people have ample, strong opportunities to go into with growing wages. And that's what we saw in today's report.
A sound effect apparently added there, John, but not a lot of help. This is your sweet spot.
What a bunch of gobbledygook that was.
What would you tell that small business owner, John?
You know, just tell the small business owner that these programs are not being effective right now. We can't grow our economy and sustain these businesses as long as we encourage people to stay home. And there's a change in mentality to stay home because of the pandemic. We can't fuel it. We have to stop these enhanced benefits. We have to incentivize people to get back to work. Or, Joe, these businesses are going to close, many of them.
We're already hearing about it, and we're hearing about it from you. John Taffer, Bar Rescue, thanks for your time tonight. Good to see you.
My pleasure, my friend.
You gotta have boundaries. You gotta draw a line.
Why? He doesn't.
I think he does, actually.
Really?
Bit of a surprise on The Late Show. Stephen Colbert calling out CNN to one of its hosts. What should the network do about Chris Cuomo? That coming up. And as the Taliban captures a large swath of Afghanistan, reports of division within the Biden administration over whether the Afghan military can handle it.
I'm ready. I want people to know that I'm ready for this. And it's not something we expected or asked for, but I am fully prepared to assume the responsibilities as the 57th governor of the state of New York. At the end of my term, whenever it ends, no one will ever describe my administration as a toxic work environment.
That was New York Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul speaking this morning, just one day after Governor Andrew Cuomo announced he would step down, effective 13 days from today. Hochul will be taking his place. Something else that's come under scrutiny since the governor's resignation, his relationship with his brother, CNN host Chris Cuomo. The host covered his brother extensively during the height of the pandemic, focusing on the highlights of his job as governor. But he also took part in strategy calls, we later found out, and advised the governor on what to do. Now he's taking a week off, and CNN's Brian Stelter spoke on the matter on The Late Show last night.
You got to have boundaries. You got to draw lines.
Why? He doesn't.
But I don't think if we open up the journalism ethics book, there's no page for this. It's the craziest set of circumstances you can imagine, right? A governor and a brother, both in these high-profile jobs.
For more on this now, we want to turn to one of our voices of the nation, Matt Taibbi, Substack author and publisher. Good to have you back, Matt. How problematic is this for CNN and Chris Cuomo?
It's a very bad look, and I would disagree with Brian there. There absolutely is a page in the ethics book about this one. It's completely prohibited for somebody to be an advisor to a politician and reporting on a politician at the same time, whether or not they're related. That's not a difficult call at all for any network to make, and for them to claim ignorance or claim that this is sort of a unicorn situation that could not be foreseen. That's a very bad look for CNN.
The other thing that's popping up here now is that the Cuomo show is shedding female viewers, which signals perhaps some are calling it a Cuomo problem for CNN, if you will. What are they supposed to do here, Matt, when you have a primetime host who has a direct connection to the biggest story of the day or the week or the month?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously not in favor of punishing, one person for the sins of the other. There's an ethics problem there, though, however, and that might be part of what's responsible for the departure of those female viewers, and probably, that's deserved, I would imagine. I mean, if those viewers know that Chris was advising the governor to, on how to rebut the scandal and how to put it off, of course they're going to react negatively. Although the tendency is that viewers come back over time. Now it's just a very particularly bad time.
Matt, I read your recent post on good people and bad people and its impact on this story in particular. What point are you trying to make about what you call the trial by headline era?
Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable with the way a lot of these stories develop. I mean, we have a very black and white way of looking with wrongdoing in the news these days. We tend to raise media consumers to be rooters rather than thinkers. We tend to go with the first version of the story rather than worrying about the details that develop later. And there's a lot of sort of moralizing that goes on. Often before we find out the full context of the situation. Now, in this particular situation, what's interesting about Cuomo is that a lot of this stuff was already known, a long time ago, and then suddenly the press decided to make a much bigger deal of it after the report, which I think is also a very bad look for the media because it suggests that they're sort of selectively interested in the problem. So
the media social media as well, Matt. I mean, you point out too in the article the important issue isn't necessarily right or wrong, but whether or not he'll survive. And on Twitter, the goal, you say, is to topple the career once the ratio, or the right ratio anyway, is reached. And we're seeing that also with another thing we want to get you on, and that's Trevor Noah's getting blowback on Twitter for turning against the governor. He called himself a Cuomo-sexual during the pandemic. Here's a clip of that.
There's a group of women who came out and they said, we're falling in love with Cuomo. And I said, well, yeah, everyone should be a Cuomo-sexual in that way.
Now, though, Noah has tweeted that New York has flattened the perv. So here comes the online survey you talked about, good and bad, and one targeting the other.
Yeah, and again, this gets back to the kind of lack of subtlety in the way we cover things. Like, people, they sort of occupied this.
Well, looks like we lost Matt's signal there. All right. Well, Matt Taibbi, is always good to have his voice. We'll catch up with him again soon, no question. Meantime, the situation we're going to shift now to in Afghanistan, deteriorating by the day. The Taliban captured 3 more provincial capitals today, giving them control of nearly all of the northeastern quadrants and 2/3 of the entire country. Now, U.S. officials are warning Kabul could fall in the next 90 days. Some fear it'll happen within a month. NewsNation's correspondent Allison Harris spoke with the Afghan ambassador to the U.S. today, and she joins us now. And Allison, this is the first time the ambassador has spoken to any American network, and I understand it got very emotional.
It was emotional, Joe. The Afghan ambassador to the U.S., Adela Raz, says the withdrawal of U.S. troops has been quick. She says that it has created consequences, but she believes that with the help of U.S. air power, there's still hope for her country. The Taliban have taken over 9 of the 35 provincial capitals in the country. Today, the ambassador tells me she wants more U.S. firepower, close air support, even after U.S. ground forces pull out at the end of this month, saying that this war is growing more intense by the day, as you mentioned. She says the air support being provided right now is extremely limited, and she wants more help defending Afghan officials against Taliban assassins, saying that the killings are threatening the government's backbone. Ambassador Raz is also calling on the U.S. and allies to reimpose sanctions like travel bans on more Taliban leaders. She says that there's now a humanitarian crisis happening in her country as Afghans are being killed. They're watching their homes and their livelihoods be destroyed. They're fleeing in the face of this Taliban advance. We asked her, can you win? Can Afghanistan turn the tide on this Taliban takeover on its own? And I asked her the response to President Biden saying yesterday that the Afghan forces need to defend themselves.
Look, we have been fighting for ourselves and for the peace and security of the rest of the world. It's more of a sophisticated security concern than Afghans fighting to defend their country, and that we're doing, and we will do it till last minute.
The ambassador saying there that they are defending themselves against international terrorist groups. She's holding out hope. Today, the president's spokeswoman and the Pentagon both questioned whether the Afghan forces have the political will to fight back. The press secretary saying they need to determine if they have that. The spokesperson for the Pentagon saying it's really about having the will and having the leadership to use the weaponry and the force in numbers that these Afghan forces have. Joe?
Allison, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We're going to get more on this now. Welcome in Hugo Lawrence. He served as the U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan in the Trump and Obama administrations. Mr. Ambassador, this is not looking good. You just heard Allison's report there. What's your biggest concern right now?
Joe, again, good to be with you. Yeah, no, it's a very critical situation in Afghanistan right now. As you mentioned in the opening, the Taliban has been very successful in seizing, I think they have 9 provincial capitals, 9 of the 34 provincial capitals. They probably control 60 or 70% of the country, and they are on the move. Look, it's a very difficult situation. What I would emphasize is that this didn't have to happen. And I think it's important to just put that on the table. We weren't talking about Afghanistan 3-4 months ago. The reality is that the decision that President Biden made was a very wrong decision. It was a strategic blunder of the highest order. You know, I have a lot of respect for the president. I've known him since the 1980s when he was a senator. He's someone who knows foreign policy very well, but he made the wrong decision.
What should he have done, Ambassador?
We were at a very critical moment because what we were trying to do is we were trying to promote a political settlement between the government of Afghanistan and the Taliban. So, but the presence of a very small number of US and NATO forces and a very small air contingent, but that was extremely effective, was a critical enabling force. And it gave us a lot of leverage in trying to achieve what we were trying to do. Look, I'll give you a great example, Joe. When I was ambassador in 2017, the first year of the Trump administration, we actually put out of action. The Afghan military was doing 95% of the fighting, 99% of the dying. And we were able to put out of action 17,000 Taliban fighters in the year 2017, and we lost all of 5 US forces. So we're not on the front line. So again, I just emphasize the mistake has been made. The question now is, what do we do?
Right. So what do we do? I'm curious because the question is, what if what we do now is continue where we're on the path to stay out, which is what the president has said. What happens, and is it inevitable for the Taliban to take over, and what happens to Afghanistan if that does?
Look, nothing is inevitable. Clearly, the Afghans are trying to reposition their military. and they're trying to consolidate. They were overextended. They were trying to cover everything, very difficult to defend everything. So they're consolidating, trying to protect the population centers, clearly Kabul, the capital, but there's some major cities for you to watch for, Kandahar, Herat, Lashkar Gah, Mazar, up in the north. As you know, the Taliban's taking most of the north. There will be a big battle for Mazar. Watch how that goes. The military is clearly going to have to make their stand. Time is starting to run out.
Right.
The U.S. can still play an enabling role. It's harder to do from 1,000 miles away from bases that the U.S. has in the Gulf.
Right.
But the ability to provide air support, I think, is important.
Okay. All right. Former Ambassador to Afghanistan, Hugo Lawrence, great to have your voice. This will be continuing to develop, and we'd love to have you back. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Joe.
Senator Rand Paul suspended from YouTube for a week. We'll show you the video that got him put in social media jail and ask, is it fair? Add a story you'll only see here. Former NFL players say they're not getting their share of the league's concussion settlement because of race. Tonight, they're taking the fight to the Department of Justice.
I mean, this is serious stuff. The system they put together is inherently racist.
In private, he said in emails in last spring that most of the masks you can get over the counter don't work because the virus particles are too small and go right through them. That's still true. They don't work.
And just like that, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul was kicked off YouTube. The social media site said Paul's comments violated the company's COVID-19 misinformation policy because the policy bans claims that masks that do not play a role in preventing the contraction or transmission of COVID-19. Joining me now, Jim Anderson, CEO of Social Flow. So, Jim, I think we all support free speech and the exchange of ideas. Where do these social media companies draw the line?
Well, clearly they draw the line around masks and vaccine misinformation. I think, Rand Paul made a statement that I think he believes is defensible. What YouTube has said, well, we rely on the CDC's guidance, and the CDC does say that masks work. And so we believe what you're promoting is misinformation, and the way we respond to that is we suspend your account. So you're getting a 1-week suspension from that. And very similar to that, we saw with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Twitter, sort of the same thing on vaccines. And you state what we believe to be misinformation, and we're going to take action. My platform, my rules.
The debate, that is certainly, it's their playground, so you got to play by their rules. But I think the debate with Rand Paul, anyway, was what he was saying was cloth masks and that there was a differentiation between them and N95s. And again, I think the question that people have about this, Jim, is where we get to a point where these things maybe should be left up so that people are allowed to debate and refute them.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think what YouTube would say, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they would say, hey, if you want to produce a paper for the Journal of the American Medical Association and submit it, that's great. You can argue the nuance. One of your previous guests was talking, we don't do nuance very well in these kinds of issues, especially issues around masks and vaccines. It's really difficult to do nuance. And so I think what you're seeing is the platforms say, look, we're going to establish our standards. We're going to decide that we're going to listen to what the CDC says. And if you state, not an opinion, a factual statement, it's one thing to say, I don't believe vaccine mandates are required, or I don't believe mask mandates are required. It's quite another to say that vaccines or masks don't work.
Right. Okay. Jim Anderson, good to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
A follow-up now to an exclusive story you saw right here on the Donlon Report. Former NFL players claim they're being denied money from the league's concussion settlement because of race. Tonight, Rich McHugh has new information on those players now asking the Department of Justice to step in.
Request for inquiry into civil rights violations by the National Football League.
We strongly believe that the civil rights of Black class members were violated.
This morning, Dr. Amy Lewis and her husband Ken Jenkins, a former NFL player, delivered this 6-page letter to the Department of Justice.
We have a lot to give to you today.
Asking them to investigate the NFL's billion-dollar concussion settlement.
I mean, this is serious stuff. The system they put together is inherently racist.
Under the terms of the settlement, the NFL has applied race norms, a scoring algorithm that assumes black men begin with lower cognitive skills and have to score much lower than whites to show cognitive decline, making it harder for blacks to qualify for an award.
The problem is it's David and Goliath, and the NFL is Goliath, and they are powerful, and they're smart.
In the letter, signed by over 40 wives of former NFL players, they call out the NFL, the class counsel, Chris Seeger, and the judge presiding over the settlement, Anita Brody.
We are asking the Department of Justice to really look under the hood here.
They write that race norms were applied purposefully and unconstitutionally to discriminate against black players.
The NFL in June came out and said, we're sorry, we're going to end race norming. Why are you now taking this letter to the Department of Justice?
Pearl clutching doesn't cut it with me. It is not good enough just to say, hey, we race normed, we're so sorry, we didn't mean it. Players have been harmed here.
In the letter you say, we further assert that together the NFL legal team and Chris Seeger, sole class counsel, colluded in secret to violate black players' civil rights in order to save the NFL money. That's quite a statement.
Two things happened. Either Chris Seeger is wildly incompetent, or he knew exactly what he was doing and threw black players under the bus to save the NFL money.
But you write, colluded in secret to violate black players' civil rights. What do you mean by that?
He certainly didn't announce it to any players that were not represented. There is an email from Brown Greer that directed doctors to include raw data scores. What that means is that they wouldn't be able to race norm if they didn't have the raw data scores. And it said very clearly that Chris Seeger, together with the NFL attorneys, have directed us to now ask for raw data.
That email from Brown Greer, the firm administering the settlement claims, was sent in November 2017, 4 years before the NFL and Chris Seeger admitted that race norms were, in fact, used. In their letter, the wives are asking for demographic data that the NFL has refused to release, even after 4 U.S. senators have asked how many white player claims were paid and how many black player claims were paid.
We need sunlight. We need transparency. We don't have the power as individuals to shed that light, but certainly the Department of Justice does, and they should. It's time.
Let's get more on this now. Bring in Rich McHugh. He joins us with more on what he's heard from the NFL, which is not much, but you did hear from another party, right, Rich?
That's right. I reached out to the NFL attorneys. They did not respond. But Chris Seeger, in a statement to NewsNation, calls the allegations of collusion preposterous and adds that he has been fighting a multi-year slugfest with the NFL on behalf of the players that has resulted in nearly $1 billion in player benefits.
So the other thing, after watching this story, Rich, I'm wondering what exactly it is the players want from the DOJ.
Well, ultimately, they're seeking transparency. They want an independent team to look at this entire process. They feel that they have not been treated equitably in the settlement, and if there has been racial discrimination, which is illegal, they want that to be aired. They want that to be known, and they say there's been ultimately too much secrecy in this whole settlement, in this whole case.
So what's the time frame on this, Rich, as far as the DOJ is concerned? And they could either take this up or not, correct? When might they get an answer?
It's unclear. This is unprecedented. As with the other case that we reported on 2 weeks ago, taking it to the Third Circuit Court, it's really, this is unprecedented, and nobody really knows. If they take this case, I imagine that they would hear rather soon.
Okay, so I know there was another player, Ahman Gordon, you featured in one of your earlier reports covering this story, and they were trying to take this to a separate court. Where does that stand?
Correct. Ahman Gordon has appealed to the Third Circuit. The Third Circuit Appeals Court has yet to rule on that case. They could rule any day.
And Rich, I guess I'm overall big picturing this thing from when you were here on this report. The NFL has admitted that it was race norming, correct? I mean, that much
Correct.
is established. All right,
Correct.
so I guess the question and the follow-up for someone seeing this is, will they, or is there any indication that they will try to do something to rectify it?
Well, currently they are locked in mediation. The judge has issued a gag order on the entire case. They're in mediation trying to figure out what to do about it. The players say the answer is simple. Everybody that was race normed, just pay them. That hasn't happened.
Yeah, because there were a number of players you featured who had been approved and then ultimately in the end denied, correct?
Correct.
All right. Rich McHugh, thank you very much for your reporting.
Thanks, Joe.
We have a quick correction on the way to break. Last night, we reported the death of Bob Jenkins, a broadcast legend in racing and IndyCar. Jenkins spent more than 50 years in the racing business, and during our report, we actually aired an incorrect clip. So tonight, we want to bring you the correct call from the late Bob Jenkins, this one from the Indy 500 92, the closest Indy 500 in history.
Bob Jenkins, who's going to win it? The checkered flag is out. Goodyear makes a move. Little Al wins by just a few tenths of a second. in the history of the Indianapolis 500.
Jenkins died of brain cancer. He was 73 years old. Politics in the classroom, why one teacher in Virginia has had enough and called it quits. At top of the hour, a wide-ranging, in-depth interview with Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx on crime, violence, and the power of her office. Don't miss that ahead.